Transform your data into stunning visuals that tell a story. Discover how Tableau and Power BI can bring your insights to life. Explore the art of storytelling with these powerful tools. Let's get started.
So what exactly is data visualization? So when you talk about data visualization, these are the three things that I can think of, right? Data visualization basically is at the intersection of design, information science, and communication. Let me give you one more example. Okay. Let's assume that you want to figure out the sales on quarterly basis for a particular domain or a particular product. Now, in that case, what you'd be needing here is information, the data that tells you all the possible sales in a particular quarter for a particular product. Next, you need to communicate this information to somebody, right? It could be to yourself, it could be to a stakeholder, to a product owner, or whoever is the concerned party. The third thing is, how do you present this data to somebody, right? How do you communicate this message? This is through the form of design. If you do it through the form of design, which can be visualized properly, we call it data visualization. So that is where you need information, a particular design that can communicate a particular message, and that is what data visualization is. Say for example, I have 10,000 records with me. Now, in that case, if I just go ahead and put those 10,000 records in a sheet and present it to somebody, that won't make any sense. Instead, if I create a graph that shows or talks or gives a gist about what do those 10,000 records represent, I can convey all that information in a mere graph, in a mere visual. And that is what data visualization lets you do. In other words, data visualization is nothing but the process where you convey information by creating effective visualizations to present a particular set of information. Now, data visualization, as they say, is effective because of two other reasons or one another reason. That is, it conveys a lot of information in a very small space. You often might have heard a saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words or 100 words. I don't know what that is. So what that means is you can convey a lot of information using a picture rather than putting it in the form of text, right? Or in the form of written information. So to give you another example, let's assume that you like to read a book or you like reading books. So when you talk about reading books, I'm sure that if you read novels, these are like 300, 500, 1,000 pages books, right? And if I ask you to skim through it or go through it completely, I'm sure even if you're an avid reader, it would take a couple of days for you to finish a good book, isn't it? And that is how fast an individual can read, unless we are planning to break a Guinness World Record, right? What if I tell you that go ahead and watch a movie on this topic? I'm sure if there's a movie, you can finish it in like 2 hours, 3 hours. Or if it is something like Lord of Rings, maybe 3.5 hours, right? So what I'm trying to put forth here is, when you watch a movie, you consume similar amount of information in far lesser time. A book that takes somebody to read maybe 2 days, 2 to 7 days, you can convey that information in like 3 hours. Now, some of you might argue the fact that in books you have a lot more details. But let's assume that you still can grasp like 80% of the information that is there in that book in like those 3 hours. So it is still saving a considerable amount of time. What is happening here is, basically when you read a book and when they describe a particular character, an event or a situation, they are trying to put forth a lot of information there. Say for example, the character has brown hair. The character has nice blue eyes, right? When you talk about creating a movie, you don't have to write all those things, say all those things. You can study quite a few things by visuals, right? You can see the hero, you can see the character, you can see that character's eyes, right? Or be it imagining a particular location, be it understanding, okay, when somebody shot someone, what angle did that person shot that in? We can notice that in a split of a second. But if that was described in a book, it would take a page at least to describe the details or a couple of paragraphs. So the point that I'm trying to make here is, When you use visualization, you can convey a lot more information in a very little or a very small space. And that is what data visualization is for you in a nutshell. Moving further, if you talk about data visualization and if you are to trace back its roots, when did it start? Now, data visualization is not something that started yesterday or not something that started 5 years back. But we've been hearing about data science a lot these days and data visualization as well, right? So when you talk about data visualization in general, right? Data visualization is popular these days because we are talking about the data that is being generated these days. The amount of digital data, the amount of any form of data that we generate these days is much, much larger than what we had a few years back, right? And the reason for that is the use of social media, the use of internet, and the use of smartphones. Yes. The advent or the increase in the usage of internet rather has made us move to smart devices which can consume data. So we see a lot of interactions happening on digital mediums these days. What that means is a lot of digital data is being generated. If you go back like 15 years from now, when we did not have Android phones, back then in order to process data, we used to do it physically, right? Writing notes, reaching out to people, talking to them. But these days we video call people, we basically shop stuff online. How? Because with the advent of Android and smartphones, we had technology that could get everything delivered to us in mere clicks, get information about everything with mere clicks, thanks to the internet as well. And this is where the world started changing, and this is where the information that we had started changing. Around 2015-16 in India, it was in 16 if I'm not wrong, February, when Reliance announced a SIM card called as Reliance Jio, which offered free internet and calling for 6 months. So we saw people flocking into buying those SIM cards. Now it was aimed at getting more benefit, or basically was a stunt to ensure they grasped the telecom market. In process, what they also did was, when they provided free internet to people, we saw millions of people moving to social media platform. And when a country like India moves to social media platform, we are talking about 130 crores of people, right? And when you talk about these many people, right, we are getting numbers here. And this is where the usage of data increased. And this happened worldwide, not just in India. Last 10-15 years, we've seen a lot of data being generated and a lot of importance being given to it. So, and that is where when you have this much data, it is important to understand this data so you can control your businesses and your plans better. So is data visualization something that came up recently? No. If you are to understand or trace back its roots of data visualization, one of the first instances when data visualization was used was in 1781. It was used by William Playfair, who used geometric charts, a form of data visualization, to explore exports from 17 different countries to Scotland. So yes, if you are thinking data visualization is something that came up yesterday, no, my friend, that is not the case. Data visualization has been there in the market for a very, very long time. And with the increase in the digital data that we consume these days, this is going to be here for a longer duration, serving a lot longer purposes. So what are the different data visualization tools that are there in the market? Now, when you talk about data visualization tools, there are quite a few popular data visualization tools out there. You have Tableau, you have Excel, Power BI, the one that we are talking about. Apart from that, you have tools like ClickView, ClickSense, right? When you talk about tools like ClickView, ClickSense, those are again data visualization tools, powerful ones, but more towards the analytical side of things. When you talk about Power BI and Tableau, these are end-to-end analytical yet data visualization and business intelligence tools. In this race, you have something called as Excel. Now, many of you might wonder as in why are we having Excel in this race? Guys, Excel is one of those perennial horses that has been there in the race since a very long time, and I don't see it dying down anytime soon. People who are skilled in Excel can do so many things. Why? Because Excel is a multi-purpose tool where you can not just report data, record data, but you can also create visualizations out of it. And the best thing about Excel is it also serves as a base, as a file that can be imported in the form of a data source for Tableau, Power BI and other tools. And then you can actually go ahead and create visualizations in these tools. So it acts as a supplement for these tools as well. And that is why Excel finds its place in this list of these tools. So that is what Excel is, right? Other tools that you have is your Tableau, you have your Power BI, right? Now these tools, these initiated around 2013 and 14, right? But Tableau was the first one that came into market, and it was closely followed by Power BI. Okay. So Tableau again is a very popular product, one of the leading ones when you talk about data visualization tools. If you take a look at Gartner's quadrant, these two are very close to each other, suggesting that they're highly popular and highly competitive. Power BI on the other hand is a Microsoft product. So again, one of the benefits is we all know how big a company, how big a giant Microsoft is when you talk about the tech world. They already have plenty of tools that they have to offer. With Power BI, the benefit is it readily integrates with this stack of products offered by Microsoft, giving it an edge in the market. If you look at it from visualization perspective, Tableau gives you high quality visualizations with great smoothness. Power BI on the other hand gives you a lot of options when it comes to visualizations. You can create so many types of visualizations, and it also gives you better integration facility compared to Tableau. So again, as an individual, you might wonder which is the best tool to meet my needs. So there's no perfect winner here. It's all about understanding which tool would fit into your business requirements better, and then again going ahead and picking one. Because when you talk about Tableau or Power BI from a job perspective, both of these tools are fairly strong, fairly good, and offer fairly large number of options when you talk about jobs, when you talk about it from a career perspective, or when you talk about different companies wanting to using these tools. So yes, these tools are right up there in the market, and even if you're skilled in any one of these three, they're fairly good tools out there. But we would be talking about a specific tool only. So I believe by now you've understood what data visualization is and how it works, and what are the different tools that data visualization offers to us, or we can do data visualization using it, right? Okay, so what exactly is Tableau? So when you talk about Tableau, right, whether you talk about connection to collaboration, Tableau is basically one of the most popular tools that is out there. And this is an important line here. It is an end-to-end analytics platform. I won't call it an end-to-end analytics platform. I would rather call it an end-to-end data visualization platform that helps process your data in a way that would be very helpful in generating meaningful insights out of your data. What are some of its features? You have apt visualizations that it offers, right? I mean, the amount of visualizations that you can generate using Tableau are plenty. It gives you automatic functions as well, functions that actually simplify the process of visualization, something that we'll be seeing in the further sessions that we have. It lets you readily connect to the data that is there with you, and it gives you in-depth analysis. I mean, you can actually go ahead and basically drill down into your data further and further, making it easier for you to actually go ahead and visualize your data in different or a number of ways. If you talk about Tableau product family, right, I mean, there are quite a few products that Tableau offers. These are the popular ones that you see on the screen, right? Tableau, as we all know, is one of the leading data visualization tools in the market, and it offers different solutions that serve different purposes. Say for example, basically Tableau Reader is one. So let's not talk about Reader first, we'll come to the Reader part later. First, let's talk about Tableau Server, right? So Tableau Server and Tableau Public. Now both of these are server supporting products that Tableau offers. Tableau server is something that you can actually go ahead and install on your existing server. Now, if you talk about an enterprise level business, an application, right, you would be wanting to visualize your data. In that case, what you do is you use something like a Tableau server, something that can be installed on your existing server, right? The other thing is your Tableau public. So as the name suggests, right, it is based on Tableau server, a server that Tableau owns. It is a platform where actually people can go ahead and share their knowledge. Okay, so let's assume that you are a professor or a contributor and you want to contribute to the Tableau community. You can do it with Tableau public, and your data would be visible to people who are a part of that community. Tableau Online is more of a cloud offering that Tableau offers to you, and Tableau Reader, and you also have something called as Tableau Mobile. Now these are something that let you read into Tableau dashboards, Tableau reports that you create. Okay, so these are read-only tools that you have or products you have, where you actually have to go ahead and wait for somebody to share that document with you, and then since somebody has shared it with you, you can access it using your Tableau Reader or Tableau Mobile product that you have with you. Okay, so these are some of the key terms that you need to know about Tableau. So let's just quickly switch into the Tableau desktop version. So guys, this is how Tableau desktop looks. Okay, so this is the free version that I have, right? When you say Tableau desktop, there are two parts of it. You have the developer version or the paid version, and you have the free version as well. Okay, so when you say or when you talk about the free version, right, it lets you create visualizations, right? It lets you create reports. But in case if you need to go ahead and publish those to a particular dashboard, this is where an online or a paid account would be needed. So a paid account gives you more features, but if you wish to get started and start practicing Tableau, start using Tableau for some fundamentals, right, you can actually go ahead and use Tableau desktop as well. Okay, the free version. So let's just go ahead and explore this version. What I also said was I'll show you how it is similar or different to Power BI, right? So I might have a desktop app with me. Let me quickly open that for you. Okay, so we can compare these face to face. I'll spend like 2-3 minutes just walking you through how Power BI also works, right? So that you get a clear picture about both these platforms or both these tools rather. So meanwhile it opens, let's continue talking about Tableau, right? So guys, as I mentioned, it connects to different data sources, right? So when you say different data sources, what you see on the left hand side, okay, the Power BI desktop thing is initializing. Let me minimize that. Meanwhile it opens, right? So when you say you can connect to different data sources, see there are quite a few options here, as you can see on my screen, right? You can connect to all these data sources that are there, and even there, like if you click on this more option here, you'd get to know that there are plenty of other options that you can connect to. See, whether you talk about Microsoft Excel Server, MySQL, Oracle, even something like AWS database. Now, Amazon Redshift is a good example of AWS database service. So you can even connect to that server as well if you have data on that server, right? And there are more options. Even if you talk about picking up files, whether it's an Excel file, text file, JSON file, right? Whether you talk about Microsoft Access, PDF files, spatial files, even statistical files. Now, some of these, to be very frank, I've not even used it in my life. We are mostly concerned with the top 4 or 5 files that we mostly use. But yeah, even if you're using those files, you can do that. And there are more options that you can go ahead and look into, right? Same is with Power BI as well. It gives you plenty of options that you can connect to. Let me just go ahead and show it to you people. There are 2 windows that are open. Let me just go ahead and show you this part, right? This is how the Power BI version of things also looks. You'll get to see how similar it is to Tableau. Do not worry. If I say get data, right, it gives me plenty of options as well. the ones that I can pick from. If you feel that these are less, click on more and you'll know that there are many other options that fall under it. You see, there are plenty of options that you can choose from. You can choose different files. You can connect to different data sources as well. See, there are plenty of them. So both function very similarly. In Power BI 2, you can import your data. In Tableau 2, you can import your data. Let me go back to Tableau for now, right? If I just like scroll down, you see that there are different data sources that you can connect to. There are some sample data sets. So if I open one of these data sets, let's say I open the sample data store, right? You see, this is how the interface looks, and it is very similar to what you get. Okay, let me just close this for now. Right. Yeah. So you can see the interfaces are very similar, this one and this one, right? The only difference here is you have your data fields here in the left hand panel. In case of Power BI, if I import a particular set of data, let's say I say get data, I import an Excel file. It should basically let me pick some data set. I have a Superstore data set here as well. You would see that all the data would get imported here. Okay. And in Power BI, if you are importing data, it would give you an option as to what data do you want to load. I've just said yes to all the data that was there. And I'll just load all the data that is there at my disposal. See guys, all the data has come here on the right hand side, right? So I can play with the visualizations here. In Tableau, it is on the left hand side, right? If you talk about Power BI, forgive me for the noise guys, I've been doing these sessions from home, so yep, there could be some disturbance here or there. So guys, when you talk about Power BI, see, you have to pick and drop these things here. I put it here, right? And there would be a certain set of visualization that would be generated here. So I've just picked up a category here, and for that I'm just going to go ahead and say profit. You see, it has actually gone ahead and picked up a particular kind of visualization here for me. There you go. Same is with Tableau as well. Let's talk about Tableau a little more because that is the main topic of discussion for today. So let's say I do a similar practice here. Let me just pick an order date. Put it here. Did I put it here? Yep. And let me just go ahead and say I want to compare it with profit. There you go. The information would be here. Probably not the best of fields that I should have picked. And by default, it has picked up a quarterly thing here, right? We'll discuss these pointers, not worry, right? Before that, let me just talk about certain other pointers before we get into the details of visualization, right? So guys, you see the options here on the left hand side of the screen, right? So there are some things that are blue in color, some are in green color, right? So these are your quantitative measures, okay? The ones in the green color, and the ones in the blue are your dimensions. So dimensions, think of them as the attributes, right? As the column names that you have. And the green colored ones are the operations, mathematical operations that you can perform on your data that you have, okay? Say for example, I need to find out cities, and city wise maybe I want to go ahead and find out profit. So profit is my operation. There you go. So it is giving me numbers. Again, these are not the best of visualizations because the data here is not in that format. I'll show you some good visualizations, do not worry about that. And let's just say we go ahead and pick up our order date, right? This would tell me about the data, right? And let me just go ahead and say profit here. Or let's just go ahead and say sales for a while. Let me remove this thing from here. Yep. Since it is in bin form, I can see this or sales data better here, right? So what I'm getting here is I'm basically getting my sales for 2016, 17, 18, 19, right? So that is what visualization does. Now, some of you asked me as in, can we do this in Python? How is it different from Matplotlib? See, you can do these things using Python, but the difference here is, see, with tools like Tableau, it is just a pick and drop activity for you. You do not have to invest too much thought. You do not have to worry about any coding knowledge, right? To give you another example, just say I click on this icon and you see I've replaced my X column with Y. There you go. You see at the top here, this changes here. Year is in my columns now. If I click on it again, my year would be in the rows part, right? So that is what it does for you. So this is how it basically simplifies the process of data visualization for you, right? Now, again, I have to click on these icons right now to get information about these pointers, right? Can I do something else with it? Right. I don't want to click on it or hover on it to get information about this data. So instead, I just click on this marker here, right? Show mark labels. There you go. It's going to give me values written right in front of me. So I get to know straight away that in 2016, I basically made or did sales that was worth 484247, 470533, right? So this is how easy it is here, right? What are the other things that I can do, right? I can actually go ahead and play with this data a little more. Okay, I can try out other visualizations as well. You see, I just clicked on this pie chart and it is giving me information in a pie form. So each piece or each slice here represents a particular year, and if I click on it, I get this information just by hovering around it. If I click on this mark, again, I'll be getting this data like this, right? So when you talk about this data, right, you can play around it. You can actually go ahead and do a lot of things with the data. It depends how do you want to actually go ahead and understand this particular data. Let me just go ahead and say category, right? So I'll be getting yearly distribution of sales for different categories, whether you talk about furniture, office sales, technology, right? All this is very blue, however, right? Let's assume that I want to go ahead and give different colors to different categories. Let me just go ahead and put this category and put it in a filter. Okay. Let's just say, okay. So it will remove the other categories. This is one way of dealing with it, right? So if I just remove it from here, okay, I'll get all the categories again. But let's assume that I want to color my category. So it will give me different colors for different categories. For me to basically differentiate as in what office sales are, what furniture is, what technology are, or how the numbers are doing when you talk about it from a sales perspective. And again, if I add a marker here, I'll be getting all this information in little more detail. I'd get to understand how do these things work, right? What is Power BI in little more detail? In the previous video of this course, we've already discussed the different data visualization tools. We also talked about Power BI to some extent. Let's try and understand Power BI as in what all can it do, what it is, and how does one define it. So when you take a look at the definition, Power BI is a tool which basically lets you control quite a few things, right? Be it from connection to collaboration, Power BI is the most powerful, secure, and flexible end-to-end analytics platform for your data. When you say an end-to-end platform, right from data consumption or data sourcing to the end process where you generate reports out of it, right? Power BI takes care of quite a lot of things. So when we are talking about data visualization tools, the primary function here is to take in your raw data and generate visualizations out of it, which can convey some of the missions or messages very effectively. And that is what Power BI does for you. It gives you end-to-end solution to quite a lot of problems that you may have in your hand. Okay, and that is what Power BI is in a nutshell. Let's try and understand Power BI a little more with the features that it offers. To start with, Power BI offers apt visualizations. So the number of options when it comes to visualizing your data are plenty, they are numerous, and you can actually go ahead and customize your visualizations and do a lot of things with it. As we get into the demo part, we'll be discussing these bits in a lot more detail, and all of a sudden these concepts like depth, automatic functions, connecting to data, apt visualizations will start making a lot more sense to you. But for now, let's try and understand what the definition or what do these pointers stand for. So when you say apt visualizations, the aim here is to generate visualizations that convey detailed or a lot more information for you with ease. You can get into the depth of concepts. So this is where your drill down features come into picture. How do you get into depth of information? Let's assume that there's a business problem for which you're reporting certain data and presenting it in the form of visuals. And that certain data is nothing but the sales on yearly basis. So what we realized was, let's assume that I quoted data for 4 years where I showed the profits or sales, whatever it is, right? Let's assume sales for last 3 to 4 years. Now, what we realized was this year there was a sudden spike or there was a high increase in the sales that we did. So if I have to figure out, let's assume something like I want to understand in which part of the year did I get more sales. So I can actually go ahead and drill down and take a look at quarterly data for this year. I can compare it with quarterly data for previous years, and what that would tell me is, as in which quarter did we have more performance? Was it consistent? Was it a particular quarter that we got more information in? So when you say drill deeper or get into the depths of information, that is what you do here. Then you have something called as automatic functions. Now what are automatic functions? Automatic functions are nothing but the ease with which you can actually go ahead and create visualizations where Power BI supports you by giving you ample and good suggestions for your data. If you are not certain as in for what visualization should I opt for when I choose this particular data, do not worry about it. All you have to do is put that data, and if that can be visualized, Power BI by default will suggest certain visualizations for you. Again, something that we'll be seeing as we perform demo and we get into the practical part of things for this course. The next point is connection to data. There are very less data sources out there in the market to which a tool like Power BI cannot connect to. So when you talk about Power BI, I don't think I've seen any tool yet or known any tool yet that you cannot import your data from into Power BI. Again, the different connection sources is something that we'll discuss as we move further. So this is what Power BI is in a nutshell, be it from connection to collaboration. It is an end-to-end analytics tool for your data. Okay. And apart from that, it provides features like it gives you up visualizations, in-depth drilling and understanding of your data. It lets you basically go ahead and use automatic functions, something that you can use to connect or basically you can use to create more better visualizations, and you can also connect to different data sources, making it easily available for different requirements. So when you talk about the Power BI architecture, we are not going to get into the complications of how the architecture works in detail, but there are 3 important pointers that you need to understand, and you can see those pointers at the right bottom corner of this slide, where we've talked about data integration, processing, and presentation of information. What that means is, when you talk about any data, the first step is to get your data from different sources. The next step is, once you have that data, you integrate it, you transform it into more edible data. And once the data is edible, you just present it in a better manner. So people who work in ETL can relate to this, right? Extract, transform, and load. That is what we do. So basically, when you talk about Power BI, it works no differently, right? One, as I've mentioned, there are very few data sources to which Power BI cannot connect to. So you'd be taking in data from different data sources, right? And then you would move it to Power BI services, which is their online platform. Now, once it is there in Power BI services, you can then through the gateway move it to the servers. It can be your private server or Power BI server. And if and when required, you can use tools like Power BI Desktop, okay, which can be used to basically go ahead and create visualizations using Power BI, or basically using this tool, you can create visualizations. So what are the sub tools that you can use? This is something we'll see as we move further. But this is how the architecture of Power BI works. I hope that is clear to you people. Let us now go ahead and understand the different components of Power BI. So when you talk about the different components of Power BI, we have quite a few components that Power BI offers to us. So to name a few, you have your Power Query, you have your Power View, you have your Power BI Q&A, Power Pivot. Then you have other features as well, right? Be it your mobile features, be it your desktop features, right? There are plenty of these out there in the market. Let's try and understand them one by one, okay? So first and foremost, let's talk about Power Query. Now, Power Query is one of the important components of Power BI that can be included in your Excel, or it can also be used as a component of Power BI Desktop. Now, using Power Query, what you can do is you can basically delete your data from numerous data sources, or even extract your data from a wide range of different databases, be it your Oracle, SQL Server, be it MySQL, be it other databases as well, or different sources as well. What you can also do here is you can fetch data from records. Now these records can be like your text files, CSVs, and even Excel files, right? So when you talk about Power BI, it gives you a feature of working with data, be it dealing with different data sources, be it deleting or fetching data. All these things can be done by using your Power BI query or Power Query. What Power BI also does is it gives you a strong GUI, that is graphical user interface, so that you can actually go ahead and transform a lot of your data and use this data as you need. Now, when you talk about transforming, you might require data such as date and time, changes, adding columns, changing the types of your data and content, right? And many other different options that are there on your plate. Now, when you talk about Power Query, again, it is useful as it uses formula like your M formula language. Power Query M formula language is what we call, and it is more vigorous than a normal GUI. So that is what your Power Query lets you do. It lets you deal with GUI requirements as well, and all the data processing that we discussed at the initial point of start. Now, let's try and understand the other components. I'm going to go through these components in random orders. So let's now discuss the Power Pivot, what it is and how does it function. So when you talk about Power Pivot again is a data modeling and calculation engine. It is used for modeling simple and complex data. In Power Pivot, you can set or create relationships between different tables and calculate values that can be viewed in Power Tables or pivot tables rather. Now, when you talk about it, what it does is it also gives you a lot of space where you can actually go ahead and create your designs. And another important thing is when you talk about Power Pivot, it uses DAX, that is data analysis expressions, something that we'll see to some extent as we move further. So it is a very strong concept when you talk about DAX, and it serves quite a lot of purposes in general. So we'll discuss that as we move further. The next point that we would be talking about now is your Power View. When you talk about Power View, again, it is a data visualization component, a basic one, a fundamental one though. And what it does is it is a component that lets you interact with the data and connect to different data sources that you have, just like you do in Power Query. But the other thing that it gives you here is you can retrieve the metadata that you have, okay? And it can be used for data analysis. Now, there are many blueprints for visualization in Power View lists, if you talk about it in general form. And with Power View, what you can also do is you can filter your data for every visualization component or for an entire report if you want to. You can add slicers to it, right? You can slice and dice your data, And when you talk about reports in Power BI, these are interactive in nature and can highlight some important parts of the data or different components in Power BI to interact with each other. Now, next you have on your plate is Power Map. Okay, so when you talk about Power Map is used to visualize geospatial data, which can be in 3D mode, right? So Power Map basically lets you deal with geographic data. Now, when you're talking about this data type, we are talking about data that is specific to a particular location, and you need separate kind of visualization for it. And when you talk about Power Map, it lets you get all this data in place and also let you render this data in 3D mode. So what that means is with Power Map, you can go ahead and attribute or assume one of the attributes and then actually go ahead and create different views, be it your heat maps and stuff like that. Okay, so when it comes to dealing with geographic data, you can always opt for something like a Power Map. Now, we've been going around and around talking about different visualizations and the ease with which you can actually go ahead and get your data. The important point here is we need to question the data that we have, right? Can we do that? When you have Power BI Q&A, you can definitely do that. It is nothing but a language motor. You can think of it as a language motor that basically lets you go through your data model and question it to get certain important answers. Okay. And when you talk about it, it helps you find solutions to quite important questions that are there, figure out certain hints related to the data, and then using which you can either create more visualizations or just understand the existing visualizations better. Apart from that, you have some tools that Power BI offers. Now, we've talked about the important components and all the 5 ones are covered, but then there are certain other parts to it, right? You have a Power BI desktop, a desktop related service or a software that you can install on your system. And once you do that, you can go ahead and create visualizations out of it. Then you have something called as Power BI website, to which you can go ahead and publish your reports and dashboards. And then you have Power BI mobile apps. Now, when you talk about mobile apps, these are important. One, you cannot make changes to your data, to your visualizations when on mobile. But let's assume that you're stuck somewhere and you need to take a look at the report that has been sent or a dashboard that has been shared. What do? If somebody shares it with you on your phone and you have Power BI, which has access to take a look at that particular dashboard or visual, you can do that using your Power BI mobile. So again, guys, there are other subparts, subcomponents, but these are the core ones. I believe by now the different components of Power BI are clear to you people. So what are the building blocks of Power BI? Now, this is another important concept, theoretical in nature, but very important when you talk about its practical applications, something that is going to help us carry out our demos for this course much better. So let's try and understand what are the building blocks of Power BI. Now, when you talk about Power BI, the major purpose of using Power BI is to generate effective visualizations. So when you talk about these effective visualizations, we are talking about some key concepts that concern visualizations. So what exactly is visualization? Let's try and understand that first. When you actually present your data in a visual form, say for example, you have certain set of information that can be represented by a pie chart or a bar graph. What it is, we'll understand these graphs and charts as we move further. But let's assume that you want to convey that information in that form. It would be easier for people to consume that information than the written information that we've discussed. And when you create a visual out of the information you have, we call it visualization. The other important point here is data sets. Now, to create visualizations, you'd be needing different data sets. Data sets can be in any form. We've already discussed different sources of data that Power BI supports, right? So understanding how the data looks like and how to get your data in is something that concerns your data sets bit here. Okay. And next, as we move further, we have some other bits that we can discuss and which are thoroughly or equally important, right? And those are your tiles, basically your reports and your dashboards. So let's try and understand them one by one. First in this list, we'll pick up what tiles are. So when you talk about tiles again is a flexible, movable visualization that you can pick up. You can put it in a report, you can put it in a dashboard, and that would convey a single set of information that concerns your requirement. And when you build on it and you create multiple such visualizations and tiles together, you put it in a report. Now, when you talk about a report is basically one or more pages of visualizations, graphics and texts that you can put together and convey a certain set of information. It is a little different than what a dashboard is. Whereas if you talk about dashboard in particular, it is nothing but basically conveying a lot of information on a single page. As we move further, we'll be classifying these two topics in detail. But let me quickly give you a quick overview of all these services again. So the first thing that you have on your plate is your data sets, right? Data sets is nothing but a different data sources from where you'll get your data. Next to it is creating visualizations out of the data that you have, and a single visualization would be known as a tile. If I basically go ahead and create multiple tiles or visualizations using the same data source, then it is called as a report. And when I have multiple reports with me, I can pick important pointers from each report and put it on a single canvas where I try to build a story. It is called as a dashboard. So these are the components of Power BI, or the building blocks rather, not the components. These are the building blocks of Power BI. Let us now go ahead and discuss Power BI reports in a little more detail. When you talk about Power BI reports, now Power BI reports are nothing but a multi-perspective view or information into a particular data set, right? With visualizations that represent different findings and insights from that data set. So we are referring to a single data set, as I mentioned. A report may be a single visualization, or it could be multiple pages of different visualizations. So here your data set is single. Please note that. Okay. In Power BI, you can create your reports and you can edit the data that is there in your reports. But when you publish it as a dashboard is where you can interact with the data, but it is difficult to change your data once it is published in the form of a report. Let's try and understand what dashboards are first. So when you talk about dashboards are basically concepts where you try to build a particular story. If we go with the definition, it is a single page, also known as a canvas, that uses visualizations to tell a particular story. It is limited to one page, and a point note is that a good dashboard contains only the important elements of that story. Enough of reading the definition that is there on the screen, which has a grammatical error right now. Let me explain this concept to you more practically. Let's assume that you work for a particular company and you work for X team. Let's assume a marketing team. Now, you could be reporting data, your personal data or your team's data. There's a possibility of that. How does that work? Let's assume that there's a manager in the company who basically handles a marketing team, and there are like 15 marketing guys. So there could be a possibility that on monthly basis, every marketing guy reports the data to the manager. So there would be like 12 guys, 15 guys who report their data having 15 reports. And then this is what my monthly report or weekly report would look like. So there would be 15 reports with the manager. A manager would consolidate that report into one major report that he has, where he talks about the entire marketing team, which has important information about every report that you have on a surface level. There could be hundreds of such teams, or maybe 10-15 teams in the company that serve different purposes. Let's assume that all these 15 teams have managers who create 15 individual reports for their teams. Now, if I talk about a stakeholder might not be interested in taking a look at those individual reports. What he wants is an insight as to what improved, what did not, and what we can do better. For that, what if we build a dashboard where we take in important pointers or the noticeable pointers that need to be noticed from each of these reports for individual teams, and put it on a canvas where we can build a story out of it. Say, for example, just because there were a lot of YouTube videos that were published on a particular channel, we saw a lot of traffic being generated for sales leads, and this is where the increase in sales happened. So we are passing on the information and trying to build a story by connecting the dots from different reports. And when you pick up this important information and build a story, we do that on a single canvas, and that canvas here is called as a dashboard. So I hope what a dashboard is clear to you people. Let us now go ahead and understand how to install Power BI and understand what its interface is. Once we do that, we can come back and cover some of the other concepts that would help us go ahead and demonstrate all that we've looked into. So let's do that. So dear attendees, this is how the Power BI desktop looks like. We'll talk about it at stretch, but before that, let me show you how to install Power BI. So to do that, open your Google or any browser that you have with you. There you go. So let's just go ahead and look for Power BI installation. Okay, and if you select it, it would redirect you to some of the suggestions, and you can just come here and look for this first one, powerbi.microsoft.com. So when you click on this downloads panel here or suggestion in the link, so you can basically see that you can download different Power BI tools that you have on your platter. Do you want a Power BI Microsoft Desktop, Power BI Mobile, the ones that we discussed, right? On-premise servers and stuff. You should actually go ahead and download your Power BI desktop version. So if you click on open Microsoft Store, it would take you to that particular place. So again, this is basically redirecting you to Microsoft stack of products available in their Play Store or in their local store. Okay, so this is where you can actually go ahead and download your Power BI desktop. You'd get an option of downloading here, but since I already have it downloaded on my system, it says launch. So if I click on launch, it would basically take me to the software that I've already installed. You can see the product is installed is what it says because I have it on my system. You have all the information here and all the system requirements. I don't think there are any major system requirements. It's a very basic desktop tool. You see, these are the requirements it has. You need like 2 GB of memory, that is very low again. So you can download a Power BI version for that. Once you do that, guys, it's just click and launch kind of an action. So just continue clicking on it till it asks you to click on finish. And once you do that, you'll be having Power BI installed on your system. As simple as that. So make sure you do that. You download Power BI here. It is a free of cost tool when you use it on your desktop. And basically there are no premium features here. From a learner's perspective, this should be more than enough for you to go ahead and get started. So that is what Power BI desktop installation looks like. I'm not going to walk you through the installation process in detail. It's not complicated. Anybody can do it. And once you install, this is what you'd have on your plate. So this is how the interface of Power BI looks like. Let's quickly walk through some of the important pointers that are there on our plate. And once we understand how the interface looks like or works, we would go back and cover some of the important concepts, and then we would get into a full-fledged demo as to how to do these things practically. So what exactly is this interface useful for? First and foremost, you have these panes here. When you click on file, you see it would show you the reports that you've created. Now I've created plenty of those here. You can save those. You can even click on get data to basically connect to different data sources. You can import and export your existing files. You can publish it to the Power BI services where you can have your reports created or your dashboards created rather, and you have other options as well. You can even click on get started to basically get information about Power BI. So let's not do that. Let's just go back for now. There's another option here, get data, you see. So this is where you can import data from different sources into your Power BI. So I'm gonna just go ahead and import certain set of information for now that can be used later on. So let's just go ahead and import an Excel file. I think I should be having an Excel data store. Yes, there's a data set with me here. Superstore is the name of the data set. And once I click on it, it should be able to import that data for me and show me how to actually go ahead and put this data in. So you see, the navigator understood that these are the different data sources that are there in the sheet that I just imported. I can just click on these things telling that, okay, import data from all these 3 files. I'm going to say load. You can transform the data if you want, but you can do that later as well. We are not going to do that because this is a fairly edited sheet that we have with us. And just like that, guys, our data would be imported. You see, there's orders, there's people, and there's returns. So it would be importing data from all these 3 aspects or all these three features that we have on our plate. Has it imported? Yes, the data has been imported. You see it on the right hand side, and you get all the categories of data that has been imported. Now, in case of Tableau 2, you have a very similar interface. The fact that we are talking about different data visualization tools, let us go ahead and look for Tableau as well. So I'll show you their interface as well. How does Tableau works? Okay. So meanwhile it opens, let's continue talking about it. So these are the different sources through which you can import data. You see the summation sign here. The summation sign indicates it's a function that you are using here to calculate these values, or a measure rather. Apart from that, these are your data that is more dimensional in nature. And if you come down here, this is more quantitative or measure kind of a data when you talk about profit, be it your discount, right? Your quantity, your sales. So this is more of a quantitative data. Here you see your different visualizations that you can use, something that we'll discuss as we get into the details of things, right? So you can also import your data, right, from different sources. If I click on get data, you'll see that there's so many data sources here. I mentioned that there would be very few data sources to which Power BI cannot connect to, and I'm very sure about it. You see, you can connect to all these data sources that are there with you, and these are plenty of data sources. I'm sure there would be very few organizations that use anything apart from these data sources. So you can go ahead and choose your data from all these data sources. You can basically go ahead and work around with other sources as well, right? If you come here, you see you have options of data modeling. So basically you can go ahead and do quite a few other things here, right? If you need a new measure, you can do that. So when you click on new measure, basically you're talking about running your DAX queries, something that we'll see as we move further. Okay. Apart from that, if you click on view, you can basically add filters, bookmarks, and also analyze some of the performances that is there. So the options when you talk about Power BI is plenty. If you just want to go ahead and take a look at your data in plain hindsight, click here. So this is where you'll be creating all your visualizations. This is where you'll see all your data. You can again go ahead and arrange your data in different ways, different forms, different formats. So you have the basically support to take care of all these things here. Say, why do I not see my data here? Come here, go to modeling, and is it because we've opened a particular pane here? No need to worry about it. As we go ahead, you see there's a lot of data here, it's just not visible. So I'm gonna say sort it in descending order, and then we'll see, yeah, there you go, everything is here. So it was hidden for some reason. So when I did go ahead and change this, you can add filters here, right? Whether you want to sort your data in ascending order, descending order, do you want to sort it, do you want to clear certain set of information, or run certain functions? So when you do go ahead and run DAX queries on it, you can do quite a few things with it. But that is a discussion for the later half. For now, let's just go ahead and understand how the interface looks like, right? This is where you can actually go ahead and create relationships. Now we have 3 tables. You can create a relationship between them. If they are not related, you can relate them in a way that you feel would make it easier for you to process your data. At the bottom here, you have different panes. If I click here, you'll see there's a page thing here. So you can add multiple pages where you can create different visualizations. Now let's go back to the the Tableau thing. This is how the Tableau interface looks like. You can connect to different data sources here. Okay. And once you do that, and if you come down here and you click on sample data superstore, which is a data set that Tableau supports, or it is an inbuilt data set, you would see Tableau's interface. Now in case of Tableau 2, you see there are and once you import the data, you see all these here. In case of Power BI, we had it on the right hand side, and this is where you'll have all the visuals like Power BI, you see. So again, we'll understand how Tableau interface also works. In case of Tableau, if you want to create dashboards and reports, you have the option for it, the story option, dashboard option, and report option here and here. In case of Power BI, that is little different. So this is about the different interfaces for both Tableau and Power BI. That's it for the interface part. Let us now go ahead and try and understand what Power BI DAX is. So when we talk about Power BI DAX, Power BI DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions, which again is nothing but a collection of functions, operators, and constants It is used in formulae and basically it returns one or more variables. It is a native formula and a query language by Microsoft. Now this is what the definition has to say. Let me, however, simplify the whole data here, the whole definition for you. In simple words, DAX or data analysis queries are nothing but these are a process where you can create functions, right? Or basically you can create sub functions using which you can generate certain values. Say for example, you are talking about certain data set where you have maybe categories with you. Now you want to count the number of categories that are there. So you can create a separate function called as count, and you can add that as a measure in your table values, so that next time when you look for the count, you have that as a column name with you. Now, why do you need this to start with? Even when you have all this data filtering and all the processing with you, if you have something like DAX, you can always on the fly add custom functions, custom measures to your data. As we get into the demo part, we would understand how to go ahead and set this in process. But before that, let's quickly understand some of the pointers that are here. To start with, DAX is a functional query language. So you can basically create certain functions and basically bring out certain functions that you want to generate results. It deals with relational data. Yes, obviously, if you talk about something like Power BI, we are mostly concerned with relational data, not mostly, always concerned with relational data, and it helps you perform aggregations. This is something we'll see as we get into the demo part. Next, let us go ahead and understand what are the components of Power BI DAX. So when you talk about DAX in general, DAX has three components. One is the syntax, the other one is the function, and the third one is the context. Now, when you talk about a function is nothing but a formula, something like sum, something like count, right? So that is a function. Syntax, what is a syntax? Syntax is nothing but grammar to implement something, right? When you talk about syntax for English language, grammar for English language, it is nothing but how you form a sentence, right? In mathematics, syntax can be creating mathematical functions, mathematical formulae that would give you result. Just like in programming, we have syntax that is used to basically convey a particular action, right? Similarly, when you talk about Power BI, we are talking about mathematical calculations here, aggregations here. And for that, you'd be needing some grammar, some syntax. And this is what the component syntax of Power BI gives you. Next, you have context. Now, context is the ability to create functions, right? So if you are dealing with basically adding or working with row values, this context would be called as row context. Similarly, if you are adding a filter either to a column or even to a row or to the entire data, then it is called as a filter context. So basically you have two contexts here, that is your filter context and your row context. Similarly, you have functions and syntax in Power BI DAX. Let us now go ahead and move into the Power BI console and try and understand how DAX functions can be created or how do they work. We would be going ahead and creating quite a lot of visualizations, but that is for the later bit. For now, let's try and understand how Power BI DAX works and what all can you do with Power BI DAX. So to do that, let's assume that we have quite a few measures here, quite a few stuff that we can work around with. So here's a column name called as subcategory. Let's try and write a DAX query for it or a function for it that gives you the count of the subcategories that we have with us. So if we come here in the data source, you'd get to know that we would be having this category of sub data somewhere, right? This is what we have here. Let's assume that I want to count all these categories. Now, fortunately for us, we can keep a track of it. If I scroll down, you would see that there are 9994 rows. So our count should be around that, right? If we create a count function for or a count measure for this particular subcategory. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test if the hypothesis is correct. If I create a count function that basically gives me a count of the total rows under a subcategory, can we do that? Yes. How do we do that? I come here, I right click and I say new measure. And what is the measure that I'm going to create? Let's call it subcategory count. Okay, so as you can see, Power BI is smart enough to give you suggestions where it would suggest certain things to you, basically operate with, so that your functioning becomes easier. Let's see how does that work. If I come here, okay, and now I want to count it, right? So all I have to do is I have to just type COU maybe, right? So it will suggest the possible functions. If I had to do sum, I would have typed sum, right? It would have given me that. So again, it is suggestive, this interface, where if you put in certain values, it would suggest a solution for it. Now let us go ahead and look for count and select count. There you go. And it would open the syntax for you. What it suggests is enter the column name for which you want to count, right? Let's say subcategory. You see, so the orders table has subcategory. I'm just gonna go ahead and enter it here, and I'm gonna hit the enter button. And once I do that, the category gets added here. You see, so if I come here and drop it here, you see it creates a bar graph for me. Okay, we'll understand all these graphs and stuff, but I want to check whether the count is correct or not. So there's a visualization Power BI called as card visualization. You see, it gives you this number, suggesting that there are these many subscribers, and that is the, not subscribers, subcategory count. And that is the count that we saw here at the bottom, isn't it? 9994. So it is giving us right and exact values that meet our requirements, isn't it? I'm going to remove this for now, and I'm going to remove this from here as well. So the subcategory count thing, I want to delete it. I do not want it here. I'm going to just delete it. Yes. So this is how your DAX basically works like. Okay. I hope that is clear to you people. Now let us get into the final bit of this course, and let us try and understand visual analytics. Visual analytics is nothing but the ability to use visualization to convey information better. So this is where we are going to get into the details, into the demo of Power BI. We will explore Power BI to the core, and at the same time we would understand different visualizations that are there with us. So let us just go ahead or go back to our Power BI console and see how we can do all these things. So I've gone ahead and I've opened up the Power BI console. Let's try and understand this console. So I've actually given you an explanation as to what this interface does and how it looks like. Now we are going to go ahead and drill down into it from more of visual analytics perspective. But for us to understand this better, let us try and understand the different visualizations that we have with us, or what are the popular visualizations, charts and graphs that we know of. So let me quickly explain those to you. Okay, let's do that. So talking about the types of visuals or charts we can create or we can think of. Now there are plenty of those. I mean, there are 40s, 50s, hundreds of these. So we'll discuss the basic ones and the important ones that are centric to all the other charts. So the very first chart that should come to your mind is bar graph or a bar chart. This is something that is very popularly used as many statisticians. This is something that we learn in schools as well, right? A bar graph is more of a graph that gives the information about two values and how do they work around each other. Let me quickly define this for you to start with, and then we can go ahead and see this in the visualization part as well. So when you talk about bar graphs, it is the simplest and the most straightforward way to compare various categories in the classic graph. It is one of the most recognized visualizations, graphs or charts out there. When you talk about bar graphs, they are very popular or known for visually presenting nearly any type of data. In particular, we are talking about if you want to compare multiple variables, this would be a good option to do that. And to give you an example, let's come here. Let's just go ahead and create a sample visualization. Again, guys, I'll be talking about quite a few pointers. Do not engage yourself into this, as in if you feel that this interface is new, but we'll get into the details of it. See, this is a bar graph, right? What you see here. So this is how you create a bar graph. How do we get into the details of it? This is something we'll discuss once we are done with talking about all the graphs that are there with us. Now, let us go back to the sheet and talk about the next one. Then is the pie chart. So when you talk about the pie chart or pie graph, it's not a graph, it's a chart basically. Pie chart is nothing but a circular graph or a visualization that you can think of. And when you talk about this, this is how a pie chart looks like. But the fact that there's only one value here, it would look a little different. So let's just put in categories here, and this is what a pie chart looks like. So basically you're talking about a particular entity. If divided into multiple parts or into subcategories, how would that entity look like? When you're looking for this sort of information, this graph is called as your pie chart. And again, if I remove this, there is third thing on our list, which is a line graph or a line chart. Let's call it line graph. Line graphs are something that are very important when you talk about comparing two variables in real time or in time format. To give you an idea, let's assume that you have order date with you and you want to calculate profit, and you create a line graph. See, this is something that would give you value for two variables in varying time. So that is what a line graph does for you. Again, I'm covering these things quickly because I want to discuss other pointers as we get into the details of data visualization, but these are the basics that should also be clear to you people. So I'm just walking you through those pointers. And then you have your histograms. Now histograms are nothing but continuous bar graphs that basically show values for basically continuous values that are broken down in intervals. Like let's assume that you want to draw a graph for values between 10 to 20. Similarly, 20 to 30 is another graph. So you'll be having a bar graph that is connected to each other, maybe 10, 15 graphs or bars that are connected to each other. That kind of diagram is called as a histogram. So these are some of the popular graphs that people use. The other one are your geographic graphs or geospatial graphs. These are something that are used to convey information based on the location. Something that we'll see as we get into the visual analytics part, which we are going to do right away. So let's just go back and now try and understand how Power BI works and what all can we do with Power BI. So all the formalities, all the basics that are required have been covered. Now let us try and understand how can we create visualization using Power BI. Now all this while we've talked about all the concepts that are important for you to get started with this demo. Let's just go ahead and try and implement those things one by one. In the previous demo where I talked about the interface, we've actually gone ahead and see how we can basically import data and how the data looks like, as you can see here. So we are still with the Superstore dataset that was there with us. Now what we are going to do here is we are going to go ahead and continue our visualization from there. So there are certain things about the interface that we might have not discussed here yet. That is, how do we create visualizations in Power BI? Now there are plenty of options for you to do that. One is you can either double click on the column name that you have. The other thing is you can first select a visualization like this, and you can put in values there, or you can first select values here and then choose a visualization to meet your needs. By default, Power BI will suggest certain visualizations which it feels is best to represent a particular set of information. So you can choose both the options if you want to. Let's try and do the visualization process and see how does it go or how does it work for us. So to start with, first let's try and visualize certain data. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up order date. Okay, and while I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and put in my profits. You see, so it gives me profits for n number of years that are there. With Power BI, you can right away adjust all the profit and stuff that you want here itself. All your graphs can be resized to meet your needs, and you can actually go ahead and look into the values the way you want to. Now, what you see here is you see profits for the following years, right? It's what, 13, 14, 15, 16, right? So it's fairly old data, but it doesn't matter. It is for the demo purpose, so we should not be putting in too much thoughts into these things. How do we go about this drilling down process here? I had given you an example in the theory part where I mentioned that you can drill down into your data. Now let's assume that you want to take a look at the data by drilling down. Can we drill down? Yes. So let me click here. So we should have gotten values. Yeah, there you go. So it has drilled down now, and you see the data is there as per the quarters that we have, right? So it is Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. So the data here is now divided into quarters. If I want, if I go back, it would give me yearly data, and if I click on this, it would give me quarterly and yearly data both, the final one. So it is merging all the views that are there. So you see Q1, Q2, Q3 for 2013, similarly for 14, right? And this is how it looks like. In Power BI, you can actually have marked labels as well. If you want to take a look at values, you can just hover on it and you'll get the value. If you click on this particular thing, it will give you, okay, I actually accidentally clicked somewhere else. So it has just changed the access for the data, something that I do not want. So I'm going to remove it from here for now. I'm going to just go back and put in the data again. So order date is what I have, and I have the profit here with me, isn't it? Now, if I just come here and if I just put this information in a corner, let's try and create some other visualizations as well. I'm going to go ahead and pick this visualization, and I'm going to show you how Power BI functions. So now I'm going to just expand this information, whatever it is here. I want a bigger chart for this. And again, let me just go ahead and put in profit. And let's see if we can put in something else. What is the other thing that we can put in? Let's put in sales. You see, for the total sales, the profit that we had was limited. And if I click on the profit that I want to see, it's represented by this. If I click here, this is what I'll get. But this is not one of the best visualizations that I would want. Let's just come here and put in order date here. Now, if I click on this particular thing, it would highlight that particular graph in the other visualization that I have. So you can do that as well, right? Let's assume that you want to find out profit based on the subcategory that you have. So I'm going to remove the order date for now, and I'm going to come ahead and pick my subcategory option here. I can drag and drop it and it will still represent the same information to me. Now, let's just go ahead and click on this particular value. You see, so what this suggests is copiers had this much amount of profit, and for every year, this is the amount. So there was a rise in copiers profit, and it was a fairly good amount of rise. If I come here and if I click on it, the profit is 49543, right? If I come here, it is 61618. This year it is 81726, and this particular year it is 93507. So basically, if I compare it with this value, the profit has almost doubled, right? So this is how you can actually go ahead and track your data in numerous ways by using Power BI. Again, let's assume that you want to play around with the colors that you have. You can do that. In the access, you can again play around with a lot of stuff. We'll drill down further, but for now, let's just come here and let's play with the data colors. Can I change colors? Let's assume that I want to have a different color for my graphs. If I select this and I just change a color here, let's say I want it pink. So all of this will change or have a different color, and you see all of it is reflecting here. Apart from that, if you want to do other things, you can actually go ahead and play around with it. Do you want borders here? Do you want backgrounds? Do you want to add images in background? You can do that. Why do we need to add images in the background? What purpose does that serve for me? Let's assume that I use images in the background. In that case, the benefit that I get out of adding those images in the background is, let's assume that I'm putting forth a report for a particular company. Let's assume that I want to have a logo there of that company. I can do that. Let's assume I'm creating an IPL dashboard. So in that, if I add a background of IPL trophy or maybe IPL teams together, and I make it little less, I reduce its transparency, in that case, whatever is on top that would get highlighted, yet having a plain background about IPL in the back. So you can actually go ahead and do all these things here, right? So this is how you go ahead and create visualizations in Power BI. Let us come ahead, or in the next page rather, and create other kinds of visualizations that we can think of. So let me just go ahead and use this. This is a geographic graph, and since it is a geographic graph, I'm going to go ahead and put in profit here. So this will take time to load because it's a geographic graph. At times it consumes more time than expected. And let's just talk about profits state wise. Are we getting any information here? Yeah, there you go. So there's some information here. And this is not again the best of visualizations that you could have used. Let's see if we can reflect any information here, right? For that, I'm going to go ahead and put in my sales. Okay, again, not the best of visuals. So let's just uncheck all of this information that we have with us, right? And I'm going to just go ahead and remove this for now. The reason I'm doing that is I'll tell you. Let's assume you put in states here. Okay, you see it is giving you information about different states that are there. So these are the different states. Now let us come here and add certain values. If I add states to the legend, it will give different colors to it. If I add it latitude, again there should not be any change here, but instead let's just go ahead and add profit. Now let's see if we get any profit here. We won't. Yeah, it's there. So basically you see New York is the one that had good amount of chunk of profit, right? Similarly here California also has good amount of profit. What this suggests is two of the major states in the country had a surplus amount of profit, and it is understandable. These are the bigger states or the more industrious states of the country. So basically again you can create visualizations depending upon how do you want to deal with it, right? Let's assume that I come back to my previous table or sheet, and here I put in this thing. This is a card value. So if I click on the card value and if I put in my profit here, it will give me profit, right? So this is the profit we had in total. Okay, let's assume that I want to filter it. Can I do that? Yes. So what are the filter conditions that we can have here? Okay, we cannot apply filter condition to this. Maybe to this we can. Let's try and filter it out. So whatever is the profit, which is, let's assume the maximum profit here right now is 44.52, right? So let's put forth details saying that whatever is the profit that is below 30,000. Okay, not a great filter. We'll add filters later, but I hope the idea or the gist is clear to you. And when you talk about a card image, it will give you values based on the other visualizations that you have. So you can always have highlighters added here or there, and this is how the visualizations look like when you create visualizations using Power BI. So we've seen a line chart before, we've seen a pie chart now, and we've seen a bar graph as well. So this is how you actually go ahead and create visualizations, and there are plenty of options here for you to choose from. If you want global information, you can come here and just click on this globe, and you can have information represented globally as well if you want to. So if you put forth the state here, you'll have global representation of the information that we just did. So you can use these, you can use these if you want. So it depends upon your usage. What are you trying to use and how are you trying to play around with the data? And there are plenty of things that you can look into, right? But when you create a report, right? So you've created a report here, you can publish it. Let's try and do that. Let's save this report as demo report or GLA. Let's just say save. Now it would ask me, do you want to open it or where do you want to save it? to start with. Save it in my workspace. For this, you would be needing your email ID. So make sure you have one. So publishing it to Power BI. So it would put it on Power BI server when it gets published. So this is where you would be needing internet connections as well. So when you click on it, it should open that report for you. There you go. This is the report that we created. Now, since it is published, you cannot just come here and do whatever changes you want to. You can interact with it, but not go ahead and make changes here. Now, this is a report, but I want to publish it to a dashboard. So in a dashboard, you are going to go ahead and put in certain visuals that you have, right? So we discussed what dashboards are. Dashboards are nothing but a single canvas where you can take in data from different reports as well. So to give you a context, you see there would be quite a few reports that I have created till time. So let me just see if there are reports here in my workspace. There you go. So these are some older dashboards that are there with me, and these are multiple reports that I have with me. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna try and create a dashboard where I'll pick in some random reports and from those reports I'll pick up some random visualizations that I would add to one canvas to one dashboard. So let's pick one. Demo report GL is the first one that we've created right today. So let's just click on this and let's say I want this graph. So I'm gonna select it and I'm gonna say pin it to a dashboard. What is the dashboard? I'll just create a new one. Let's call it GLA Power BI and I'm gonna say pin it here. Do you want to go to the dashboard? Please do that. You see, there's this visualization, and again, now you cannot act on it. Okay, you cannot make changes to it, but you can go back to the report from where it was created. How? You click here and it would take you back to the report, right? So I'm gonna go back again to my workspace, and here I'm gonna go to the report. This time I'm gonna pick up a random report. Let's say report 1. And I'm gonna go ahead and pick up this pie chart. I'm gonna say pin where? To the dashboard. Which one? GLA Power BI. So if I go, it says, do you want to create a phone view? If you create a phone view, you can send these on your mobile app and you can view it there as well. Okay, so this is how you do it. The icon went away though. So I'm gonna go back to the reports in the workspace. I'm gonna go to the dashboards that I have, and GLA Power BI is what I'm gonna open. You see, I picked up another visual from another report, and now in this report we have two different visuals with us, right? So this is how you actually go ahead and create reports in Power BI, or dashboards rather, not reports, these are dashboards. So this is how you create dashboards in Power BI, right? And in Power BI you can also go ahead and ask questions to the data that you have. Okay, so let's assume that I'm in Q&A and I'm gonna check. If I come back here, you see this is profit that we have. So I'm gonna ask a question. 2014. Okay, so it's opening table for me. I don't want that. I just want the profit. It says blank. That is not possible. Let's just go back here and check. My profit in 2014 was 61618. So let's just say profit. Okay, this is irritating, but let's try this. $2014. It's 62.88k. There you go. So it's near about that. I'm not sure why is it giving a different value, but it's near about that, right? So this is how you can ask questions to your Power BI data that you have, and you can do numerous things with it. Similarly, if I go back to the Tableau interface, I told you that we can visualize data here as well. In Tableau too, the interface is fairly similar, right? You can just double click on a particular value and you'd get information about that. Say for example, I just double clicked on order data. So yes, we have the order date now, and now I'm gonna go ahead and close this for now. remove. Okay, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick up sales, one of the easiest data to deal with, right? Sales. So it will give me sales based on the year, you see, and by default it suggests a line graph suggesting that you would be calculating sales for a particular year, and since it is values that are changing in time, you can have sales for multiple years represented by a line graph. A Tableau also suggests certain things on the fly. If you have one visualization like this, you can actually go ahead and put it on a dashboard, and for that you have to just click here, and that sheet where you created all the information, that would be available here. In Tableau you have options of tiled and floating visuals as well. So if I want to add it here, if I choose floating, I can just go ahead and add it here and it floats around. See, let's assume that I make it tiled. This one will move, but if I add a new sheet, it won't move around in this case. So let me remove this and let me show you. You see, it's not possible for you to move it. It's consumed the whole space. You can maybe minimize it but not move it around, right? So this is how Tableau works for you, right? But we are mostly focusing on Power BI right now. So let's just close the Tableau thing and come to Power BI. So this is how you create different visualizations in Power BI, and these are the different things that you can do with Power BI at stretch, at length. I hope that you've understood all these details, as in how Power BI works, what all can you do with it, what are the types of visualizations that you can have in Power BI, and how to play around with all the data that you have. So you can keep experimenting and keep trying, keep creating more visualizations. There are a lot of things that you can work around in Power BI.
This video walks you through creating impactful data visualizations using Tableau and Power BI, covering essential tips for designing clear, interactive and visually engaging dashboards. Learn how to make data-driven insights accessible and compelling using the unique strengths of each tool to tell stories that leave a lasting impression. If you want more tips on data visualization and analytics, subscribe to our channel for more videos.